Hello, my name's Chris and welcome to the HorrorScreams VideoVault. Now, Stephen King is arguably the best and most prolific author of the modern era, having bombarded readers with bestseller after bestseller for decades at this point. The man is a legend. He's also managed to create a wealth of legendary, enduring, freaky characters in the process. So turning to movies, it's arguably fair to say that nowhere is the fear of missing out phenomenon as prevalent as it is in Hollywood. So naturally, many of King's works have been turned into either live-action movies, live-action TV series, or sometimes both, albeit with wildly varying results sometimes. Naturally, not all adaptations are created equally. So for every green mile to thrill and captivate audiences, there's going to be a running man to essentially piss off all concerned, including the man himself. Mr. King did not like that one. So obviously there have been paper boatloads, if you will, of adaptations over the years of King's works, with many stories actually getting multiple versions, a version in the 70s, a remake in the 80s, and so on and so forth. So with that in mind, it's quite likely that your personal favourites will either feature way too high, way too low, or not feature at all on this list. So let's find out. Let's look at the top 10 live-action adaptations of Stephen King's books. Right then, so we're kicking things off with one you might not have even heard of. 1998's Apt Pupil is based on the Stephen King short story of the same name, obviously, and stars Sarah McKellen as Nazi war criminal Kurt Dusander, who is now living under an assumed name in Southern California. All seems to be going well for Nazi Gandalf until an astute high school student named Todd Borden, played by the late Brad Renfro, discovers that his neighbour is the same guy he's seen in books. He makes the connection that his neighbour is basically a Nazi. He proceeds to, under the guise of being neighbourly to his elderly neighbour, he spends more and more time with Dusander and starts to blackmail him basically into sharing concentration camp stories, horrific details of his deeds during the war. And the more time they spend together, Borden's requests and demands start to get way more sinister and dangerous and just weird, and their already tentative kind of relationship alliance breaks down further with shocking consequences for all. Now, Apt Pupil is an absolute gem of a film with a spectacular performance from McKellen, which you'd expect, an equally spectacular performance from Brad Renfro. It's just a shame that he died so young and never really got to fulfill his potential. But in terms of Apt Pupil, 100% recommend, definitely give it a watch. So then, Carrie. In this 1976 Brian De Palma directed movie, the awesomely named Sissy Spacek plays the titular role of 16-year-old Carrie White. Now, Carrie lives at home with her super religious mother and is, let's just say, unpopular at school. And she's always picked on and bullied and mocked by the more popular kids, by her fellow students, and is basically just a downtrodden, sympathetic kind of character. This doesn't sound very Stephen King so far, does it? Carrie's also got telekinetic powers. There you go. Happy now? Right, so making nearly 20 times his production budget at the box office, earning 2 Oscar nominations in the process, Carrie is considered a classic of the genre and just so happens to feature one of the most famous, most instantly recognisable scenes in horror history. So definitely give it a watch. Right, now, okay, stop, hang on. Before you decide to boycott the rest of the video and start burning Middlesbrough shirts in protest, hear me out, okay? Still there? Right, okay, cool. So, the 1990 TV miniseries adaptation of It was, it was massive at the time, it was a huge deal. And went on to, terrify audiences and inspire a generation of kids to just be petrified of clowns. Coulrophobia, I think that is, maybe pronounced it wrong. Tim Curry's portrayal of said clown Pennywise was horrific and in the best possible way, combining moments of slapstick comedy with genuine terror. The music in the series is great as well. The cast did a really good job of portraying these characters. For the time, it was excellent. However, said that twice. Have you tried watching it lately, or even in the last decade? Jesus Christ, has it aged badly. From the 90s shirts, ponytails, the Beach Boys on the soundtrack, the mechanical spider, whatever the hell that was at the end, it's not good. It really hasn't aged well at all. Do yourself a favour, take your copies, throw them in the sea, guarantee you they'll float. Okay, just to stress, we are talking about the 1989 Pet Sematary here, not the 2019 remake, which I'm sure we'll all agree was absolute rubbish. So, Pet Sematary, based on one of King's best and most beloved books. It tells the story of the Creed family, whose cat at church is found dead by their elderly neighbour Judd, who then takes Lewis Creed, the dad, to a local kind of ancient burial ground, an ancient Indian site probably, which has been dubbed the Pet Cemetery, spelled wrong by the locals. The buried church, cut to the next day, the cat is alive and well, not well, but alive, and the story progresses from there. Now when their son, Gage, is tragically knocked over and killed, in the throes of his grief, Lewis then buries Gage in the same pet cemetery which resurrected the cat, in the hopes of, obviously, resurrecting his son. Spoiler alert, it works, but his son comes back changed. Gage comes back essentially a stabby, slicey, nasty little ghoul bastard who kills Judd, kills his own mother. The story just takes a massive turn downhill from there. Everything goes to shit. Pet Sematary, yeah, great film. It deals with things like grief as well as being a straight up horror, and it's one you should definitely check out. Right then, so a much more modern example next with 2019's Dr. Sleep. Directed by Mike Flanagan and starring Ewan Obi-Wan Kenobi McGregor. I'll never not call him that. Dr. Sleep is the sequel to The Shining. We'll get there. Boy, will we cover that one. Yeah, just you wait. And continues the story of a now grown-up, creepy tricycle kid, Danny Torrance. Now, haunted quite literally by his childhood demons, Torrance has now hit rock bottom and is struggling in the grip of his addictions. Until he becomes aware of a young girl with similar psychic powers, the Shining powers, to his own, and he vows to protect her from a cult who are trying to kill her in order to extend their own lives. I mean, you know what you're going to get with McGregor. He's excellent in everything he's in. So it should come as no surprise that he does a great job of portraying the adult Danny. And the nods and winks and kind of callbacks to The Shining will no doubt thrill fans of the series. It is a genuinely great follow-up to the Jack Nicholson classic, which thankfully never succumbs to the temptation to simply throw around fan service for its own sake. Dr. Sleep is great, go give it a watch. So, another King classic responsible for a generation of kids hiding behind the sofa in terror, Salems Lot tells the story of a writer, obviously, who returns back to his hometown of Salems Lot, Guru, Salems Lot, only to discover that its inhabitants, citizens, have started turning into vampires. And she do. Directed by Toby Hooper, starring David Soul and James Mason, the Salems Lot mini-series, I mean, it does actually stick quite close to the original novel, the source material, but a few changes made in terms of streamlining the story, certain things are cut, certain things are changed, just to make it flow a bit better for TV. Now, one massive departure though is in the character of the villain, the villainous vamp, Mr. Barlow. Unlike his written counterpart, who appears as essentially a normal kind of dude, the Kurt Barlow in the series is an absolute horror. In fact, producer Richard Kobrich is on record as saying they wanted to go back to the old kind of German Nosferatu model as their inspiration, thus creating a much more frightening, literal monster for their series. And to his credit, it totally works. Right, before you start, I know, I can hear you. What? Only number 4? Right, that's it, I'm getting my rifle. I know, I can hear you. Just hear me out. Still with me? Yeah, you still there? Awesome, right. The Shining is arguably the biggest and most famous movie based on King's works. We know this. When you've got Stanley Kubrick behind the camera, Jack Nicholson in front of the camera, everyone knows why it's such a massive hit. In short, The Shining tells the story of Jack Torrance, a struggling writer and recovering alcoholic who takes up a position as the caretaker of the Overlook Hotel one winter, and he takes his wife and his son Danny, remember him, along for the ride. Now, Danny's psychic powers, The Shining, come into full effect in the hotel. We've all seen it, we all know about the famous Here's Johnny scene, we know. But, however, the movie does actually showcase many huge departures, huge differences between, from the book I should say. The biggest and most notable being the actual characterisation of Jack. Now, Buck Jack is I guess a kind and well-intentioned man whose mind is just slowly unravelled from his experiences in the Overlook, whereas Movie Jack is just a piece of shit from start to finish. And even his death at the end of the movie is totally different as well. As great as The Shining is, it's just way too different from the source material to warrant being any higher on this list. Plus Stephen King isn't a massive fan, and I can't exactly go piss off the man now, can I? So, next up is a movie which many might not even realise is actually a Stephen King property at all, Shawshank Redemption. It's a bit of an outlier here, to be fair, because it doesn't contain any, monsters, clowns, vampires, ghostly apparitions. It's a very straight movie, if that's the best way to put it. So, in this Frank Darabont directed movie, banker Andy Dufresne, I'm not going to say that in Morgan Freeman's accent, I'm not, by all means go ahead and do it yourself. He finds himself sentenced to life in prison for the murders of his wife and her lover, and he befriends fellow prisoner and contraband smuggler Red, played by Morgan Freeman, of course. So Dufresne ends up using his knowledge and skills as a banker to become an essential cog in the prison money laundering machine. So what does any self-respecting banker need to survive in the slammer? Well, a small claw hammer and a massive poster of Rita Hayworth, obviously. So to be fair, this struggled at the box office a little bit upon its release in '94, but has since found its audience on video, how old am I? It's become a bit of a cult favourite among King fanboys and newcomers alike. And the thing about Shawshank is that it can actually stand alone as a kind of a heartwarming, feel-good film in its own right, King's name notwithstanding. Oh, Annie Wilkes. Sweet, innocent, beautiful Annie Wilkes. When an author, or an author I should say, of generic romantic fiction, the Misery Chastain novels, Paul Sheldon, drunkenly runs his car off the road during a snowstorm. He wakes up battered, bruised, broken, but alive in the house, in the spare room of self-proclaimed #1 fan, Annie Wilkes. I feel like I should throw up a picture of my tattoo, my Misery tattoo here, just for reference. So, Annie discovers that Paul has actually killed off her beloved Misery in the latest book, the last Misery book. She completely flips out, loses her shit, and basically forces him to write a new one, resurrecting her beloved character. As Annie's mental state begins to just spiral out of control, her treatment of Paul becomes worse and worse by the day, more cruel, and Paul's only real target, real goal, is to just survive and maybe kill Annie if he can. 2 goals. So Kathy Bates is phenomenal in the role of Annie Wilkes, and James Caan does a cracking job again as Paul Sheldon, cracking, not unlike Joe. Although going back to Annie Wilkes, I have to say I do prefer the Lizzie Kaplan version from Castle Rock, the TV show Castle Rock. The movie itself sticks really close to the source material actually, it's really close to the book, and any changes they do make feel somehow right and necessary, make it more cinematic. Misery is truly excellent, it really is, and is only held off the top spot by... So here we are then, #1. Is it any real shock? Really? No, of course not. A bit of a cop-out though, I'll be honest. Its chapters 1 and chapter 2 do share the top spot here. However, having said that, it is totally right and totally fair that Andy Muschietti, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, sorry, the 2-part adaptation of the It novel are just absolutely deserving, again, of the top spot. So the first instalment of the story follows a group of outsiders, the self-deprecatingly known Losers Club, from the small town of Derry, Maine. The younger brother of de facto group leader Bill Denborough, Geordie Denborough, is brutally killed by Pennywise, the dancing clown. The Losers Club band together to try to take down this monster, take down this clown once and for all. Cut to chapter 2, everyone's 27 years older, they are adults at this point obviously because maths. The Losers are back in Derry, they call back when Pennywise resurfaces and picks up again his child-killing, murdery, stabby, eaty ways. With a stellar ensemble cast featuring the likes of, Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise is just a revelation. Screw you, Tim Curry, I'm going to get a lot of flack for that. James McAvoy, Jessica Chastain, who I don't believe is any relation to Misery Chastain, but we'll see. It's amazingly shot, beautifully acted, funny in places, genuinely terrifying when it needs to be. It Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, rightly deserving of a #1 spot. Literally the best adaptations of Stephen King's works. Go watch them or you'll float too. Right then, so there we go, that was the list. Anyone who knows me personally probably won't be surprised by the #1 choice. I am a massive It fanboy. Pennywise is my homeboy, everyone knows it. But if you disagree, if you agree, if you like some, if I've missed anything off, please go ahead and tell me below. I'd love to hear from you. Check out the other work we do as well at the HorrorScreams VideoVault website and the Horror Vault on YouTube. Check out Etsy. We have a store on Etsy as well. You can get some awesome merch like this, and then all the links as well, just in case you all the sites, etc. Yeah, check out the merch, t-shirts, pint glasses, key rings. You can get a life-size cardboard cut out of me to stand in the corner and just spill nonsense in a Middlesbrough accent, if that floats your boat. That's not actually true, but that's maybe something we'll look at in the future. On the subject of, well, me, I'm also a bit of an indie author. I have a collection of horror short stories on Amazon. Again, links below. It'd be great for you to check that out. But yeah, again, thanks for watching the video. Hope to see you next time. Cheers.